Hi guys, welcome to this episode. Today we are joined by Bill Harvat and we are talking about the differences between cinematography and videography. So stay tuned. Oh, we've gone red. It's red light district today. Okay. What the hell was that, Gabe?
I was excited. I'm excited for my severe sunburn. Man, I'm in pain. This is our first time having 4 people on simultaneously, I believe.
I know. Chaos will ensue.
Welcome to this episode of Get a Grip. Today we are talking about the differences between videography and cinematography. There's a lot of overlap, but there are some pretty important distinguishing characteristics between the two of those. To discuss this, we've brought on Bill Harvat. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Have you watched any episodes before? Do you kind of know what you're getting into here?
I've watched the first 2, and I'm actually working on the 3rd one right now. I've been out of town for a while, so I haven't had much time to sit down and watch, but I'm trying to get caught back up.
Very good. And so tell us about yourselves. What are you doing right now, and kind of how did you get started way back?
Well, I live in Omaha, Nebraska. I work for Woodman Life in the Woodman Tower in Omaha, Nebraska. I just started that job, and then I also have my own production studio, Harvat Productions. I do a lot of weddings, and I do corporate stuff, rock shows, all sorts of stuff. String quartets. I started editing and shooting video in 2000 or 2001. I started using Avid in college. Actually, I worked at the Peter Kiewit Institute. It's at University in Nebraska, Omaha, and it was under a grant from the Army Corps of Engineers and the National Park Service. And I made living history videos for the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial Project. And I did a lot of filming on DV, and then
Oh, wow.
that was kind of where I lived for a long time. In 2004, I moved to Warner Enterprises, the trucking company. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're a bigger trucking company in the United States. And I made computer-based training modules and videos for truck drivers, doing safety videos mainly for lift gate equipment and 3-point stance videos and stuff like that. And just basically filmed on Panasonic DV cams and made a lot of videos in Premiere, and then moved to Final Cut Pro Studio in 2005. Spent a lot of time shooting in DV, and then we got our first HVX 200, which used the old P2 cards on there.
Ooh.
And then shot video there and did more videos, and we moved to Final Cut Pro 7. And then I started at PRC, Professional Research Consultants, and we shot on an AF100 there, and in 2011 switched to Final Cut Pro 10, and in 2012 I bought 2 Canon C100s for the Mark 1s for the studio that I built there, and I've been using those for years. Shot on a GH5 there for a while once I started my business, and I recently moved over to the Sony A7 III. Just because I love the autofocus on it, and I wanted to move to a full frame camera. Huge fan of the Sony glass. And I also use this Canon SL2 Rebel for, actually this is my gimbal camera that I use a lot during weddings, just because it's really lightweight and I can throw a 40 pancake on it and it works awesome. Yeah. That's me. I just recently left professional research consultants and moved over to Woodman Life, where I'll be building another studio. That's kind of my day job as I work. I've been doing the whole corporate thing and making videos and a lot of webcasting, live streaming video over at PRC. We do probably 2 webcasts a month, and that would just be doctors and nurses talking about the most interesting subjects you guys have probably ever heard. So, and that's yeah, so that's me.
You've done a ton of stuff over the years then. You're not just in one little niche.
Oh no, I've moved around, and that's kind of the other thing is I've had to be very versatile. I actually, in my last job, also edited or maintained the company website, working in HubSpot and Salesforce. So I'm also kind of a web designer as well as video, and there were times where I had to kind of adapt and learn. And as I've always said, doing my work, where there's a YouTube, there's a way. So that's kind of my motto. And
pretty good motto. Yeah.
It's paid off because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that probably would hate doing what I do and the way I do it, just because it is kind of nerve-wracking at times and stressful. But I'm the kind of guy that last week, Saturday and Sunday, I worked 16-hour days, and then Monday and Tuesday I worked 19-hour days, and then flew back to Omaha and started my new job on Thursday. Wow. So this weekend has been great for catching up on sleep.
You complete madman.
And that's kind of like my once a year at PRC. We would have the corporate conference. Last year was in Austin, Texas. This year was in Charleston, South Carolina, and it's basically 4 days of just pure no sleep and shooting keynotes, filming breakout sessions in conference rooms, and going to a nice resort. We went to the Isle of Palms there in South Carolina in Charleston, but I didn't really get to see much of the outside of the hotel, so that's kind of how it goes there. Yeah. But yeah, and then I'm really looking forward to working at Woodman. I've only been there 2 days as of this weekend because it was kind of just dive in. They wanted me to start earlier, but I told them I wouldn't leave my other job because they would kind of be out of luck if I would have left, because they had my plane ticket ready, they had everything ready to go, and they would have been without AV if I wouldn't have gone on that trip. So
oh well.
So you're loyal.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked there for 7.5 years. So, and my boss actually said thank you, and he said, shows the kind of guy you are that you would do that and not leave us in the dust. But he also said it might have helped you get your new job because they realized how loyal you are. So.
Oh, nice. So, all 4 of us are technically videographers, correct?
Oh,
we
yeah.
all shoot
so.
video.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't speak for the rest of you, but it's not uncommon for a videographer to aspire to be a cinematographer. But I think there's a lot of confusion about what is that next step. What distinguishes just a videographer from a cinematographer? Mm-hmm. I have my thoughts. I know on my website I'm in the process of changing every instance of videographer to cinematographer, and I have my reasons for that. But maybe we should take a step back and discuss what does that mean? What is a cinematographer?
What are the differences?
What are the differences?
For me, I think the difference is lighting. A lot of the time, a lot of the points like we mentioned in a previous episode about, cinematography is the manipulation of light. It's, bending light to make the scene work. As with the videographer, I kind of feel like you're working with what you've got most of the time, and you're not being able to kind of, you know, shape or the image as much as you like with the lighting. I think that for me, that's kind of the definition of the separation between like, oh, I'm a videographer, you know, shooting this event. I can't do much with the lighting. I'm just shooting the event. But if I have the ability to actually add lights and shape the scene and create good images, don't say you can't do it without lighting, but there's that extra step of that next level of being a cinematographer where I can shape and craft the image to what I want. I think that's kind of, for me, that's the difference. That's the separation.
What about you guys? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, if I were going to say in 2018 what a cinematographer is and what a videographer is, to me, and there are a lot of definitions out there, but to me personally, I feel like a videographer is more of a guy who does the whole thing himself, or is like a one-man show, or producer, the person who films it, the person who lights it, the person who edits it, and then produces it. Whereas I feel like a cinematographer is someone who specializes in one area and then works for a company or a production company, and they're just an AD or a PA or a someone who's hired to go and do that one skill well. That's kind of where I feel like the separation is. Because I still think that you can light things and edit things well, or whatever that is, and still be a videographer. I just feel like, to me, the separation is you've got that one-man band, or that jack of all trades that's the videographer, which is what most of us do these days. And then there's a lot of people who are cinematographers who would be hired on a set for a crew. But I mean, that could be entirely wrong, but that's kind of what I think, in my opinion, of what that would be.
Well, that's interesting, because it's hard to disagree with that, but I think for me it's not so much like, what if we switch from videographer, cinematographer to videography, cinematography? So it's not so much the position, but
Right.
the art form. I mean,
Yeah.
like I look at Philippe right now, and like that, the background is all lit. I mean, we're all lit, but like the one I can see right now is Philippe, and he's got backlight and colors and arrangement and composition. That to me would qualify as cinematography, even though I know that his job title isn't specifically cinematographer. You know what I mean? So from the viewer, from the audience watching, would they know whether it was only one person or 10 people who did that work?
So I have a hybrid look to all your opinions, actually. So, for example, for me, a videographer, I would see as, generally speaking, a camera operator. Not necessarily a one-man band, but I see a videographer, that one person that their responsibility is to operate a camera and get something out of it. And you see, I think the easiest example of a videographer that I can think of is the camera operator for a broadcast unit. That, let's say, there is the producer, the camera, and the reporter that goes into a location to report on whatever that happened. I see that camera operator as a videographer. He's gonna then hand over his work. He's never gonna even touch that thing again, and his work is done. The same as a camera operator on set on a film. He has the title as a camera operator. He doesn't have the title of a videographer. I think, but in my head, I would use them interchangeably. And a cinematographer, immediately the first thing that comes to my mind is a director of photography. So that person that can or not operate a camera, depending on the crew, the director of photography, the DOP, will operate a camera. Depending on the crew, he's not going to operate, but he's the person that's deciding the lenses. He is the person deciding lighting, composition, and all of that. And I think anyone that maybe takes the time to think about all of that and to have the intention of making something visually interesting and not only just reporting something, I would consider that as a cinematographer. So you can have a videographer on a wedding, and you can also have a cinematographer at a wedding.
Sure.
You can have someone that just captured
The action.
the whole the ceremony and delivers as is, and you can also have someone that will build the story, maybe get speeches, and together with those speeches they're gonna build something. And of course, if that is a one-man band, he is shooting thinking about that edit, and I consider that person a cinematographer just because of the whole thinking that's going behind.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we break it down into the words, videographer becomes video,
Cinema,
which is just like a medium, and then cinema is like, it's not the same as video.
Form.
It's an art form. It's a different thing. Video is just like a format. Cinema doesn't mean film, though. There's something different about it. So
one's more organic, the other one's quite clinical, isn't it? In the sense that a cinematographer, you're working for cinema, you're trying to tell a story, you're trying to get an emotional response from somebody. Whereas
it's like
video, it's
hyper real.
Yeah.
Cinema is all about faking reality or enhancing reality, right? I mean, I don't edit in a red studio, you know.
You don't? Oh, okay.
I thought you lived in a.
I thought you lived in a
red
studio.
lit place.
If I was a serial killer, maybe, but you know, I mean, this is obviously just for the camera. This is a quick setup. I wouldn't call this, you know, the most amazing lighting ever. But I mean, all of us took some time to shape things and alter our natural environments.
Look, the sun's my light at the moment. You know, I've got a fairly evenly lit thing, but it's a case of I'm still going through my studio setup at the minute. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do.
This show could have been filmed on our webcams.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, exactly.
What would that have been? We would just clinically just getting us together and talking about something. I think the fact that we put at least a little bit of thought behind our framings, even the fact that we are not centered on screen, the fact that I'm not looking directly on camera, otherwise I would be addressing the audience. I'm actually looking off to the side. It's almost like if I'm seeing Gabe here, I'm seeing Gabriel here, I'm seeing Bill here. And I think the fact that we go through that little thought about even on how the thing's going to look in the end, at least move us away from the videographer and into
the
cinematographer.
Else. Yeah, we're conscious of our frame. I think that's another way you can define it, is how we are putting ourselves on frame and how the image looks in that frame. You know, as a cinematographer, you want
and what emotion you're gonna bring, what message you're sending, right?
Am I going to be getting the right kind of response from somebody if they're facing camera, or just slightly turning the angle and getting to look past, get some nice fill and shadow on their in the face again. Like, that's where you play with light. Do you want more shadow on their face? Do you backlight? Do you make it more warm, more cool? Everything has a different.
I have my Paramount nose here.
There we go, the Paramount nose. There we go. The triangle on the nose. Yeah, everything's got a meaning. Not so much a meaning, but a purpose behind it. As a cinematographer, you're always thinking of how can I convey this. Yeah, start with intent. Whereas just with a videographer, you're kind of just going. Like for me, that's why I kind of do. I always jump to event stuff as videographer stuff. Just off the basis, simply because for me,
like a
my
keynote,
own personal, like a keynote, yeah, because you haven't got time to set up that kind of stuff. For me, anyway, this is my own personal experience talking. I know people that light weddings and film weddings. It's like that's a lot of, effort and a lot of patience you need to do, and a lot of things you need to kind of consider. But like, I don't know if Bill, do you light stuff? Do you, it's like
I actually have added more attention to detail to lighting in recent months. I mean, I would always light everything that I did on a corporate gig, and actually sometimes overlight it. But when you're at a wedding and you're running around from point A to point B and trying to capture everything on your checklist, started out as a checklist, now it's a mental checklist, but making sure that you get every moment moment that they're going to want. You don't have a lot of time to throw a light in there, and even just hauling that gear around is kind of crazy. I've actually started doing a thing where I'll actually hire just an assistant for the day just to do lighting, and I've got an aperture 120D that I really enjoy, just to have something so that way I can light a shot really well, and just have that constant light, and I just throw a 48 octa on it, and that way you've got a good fill. That might not be enough for some people, but I feel like that's enough for me. And it's also just kind of keeping that portability and being able to haul it around all day, because there's a lot of weddings where you're just going from, the church to the reception to wherever the photographer's taking them in between to get photos.
Sometimes you have the bride and the groom getting dressed in two different parts of the city too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Been there.
Well, and a wedding is, in many ways, it's kind of a documentary, because if we bring too much gear there, the focus then becomes on us. And the point is that the focus should be on the bride and the groom. Now, that said, Bill, you and I met last October at the Fanuca Pro 10 Creative Summit, right?
Oh, yeah.
And one of the presenters was Simeon Corey, who demoed this, eyes wide shut type of wedding video, where, now granted, they've got substantial budgets and they've got lots of crew people. They have a lot more to work with than we do. But that, to me, was like a motion picture. That was cinema.
Yeah, that was definitely what I would call cinematography, as opposed to a lot of what I do is videography, but I try to bring those extra elements to everything I do, but I would still probably consider myself a videographer for the most part. I feel like a lot of people, and that's just because of not so much of the art form, but just even looking at web pages for other videographers and cinematographers in my area. You'll see cinematographer listed on more of the websites where people are trying to get hired as part of a project with a team, rather than if you're a videographer, you're trying to do the whole,
the whole one-man band
jack
thing,
of all trades, yeah.
So it's also a practical consideration based on just how people define those terms now.
Then there are two things also that you can consider, right? You can say that your service is a video production. So then if you get a bigger budget, you can go with more production value, you can go with a crew, and then you can have cinematography. And then as a video production, if someone says, "Oh, I only have $2,000," and then you're like, "Oh yeah, you're getting the videography part of the service."
Yeah, that's very true.
So maybe do you guys think that production value is something that impacts on using one name or the other?
I was going to ask Bill, like, how has bringing that lighting affected the image and the production value overall? Like, have your clients noticed a difference? Have they come back and said that looks like a great shot? What are the advantages of actually going that extra mile to go from, say, videography to cinematography, if you want to kind of have those terms?
Absolutely. Especially I've noticed a lot of people outdoors, it's made a huge difference, because not a lot of wedding videographers in my area will bring lights with them for outdoor shoots. And I feel like you can really get some great effects lining up your light on the same side as your sunlight, and just kind of getting that extra fill where there would be shadows. Some of that really makes a difference. You can get some really gorgeous shots that way. Also, I'm working on a project for the Nebraska Children's Home Society, and that's kind of a pro bono. I try to do one every 6 months, where it's like I just go out and do something good that I think is a great project and fun and something that's going to make a difference. So we went and did an outdoor shoot at a park with foster families, and there were all these adopted children and their parents, and they hadn't had photos of themselves or any kind of pictures taken since they were married before they even had kids. So this gave them good family photos. My good friend, he he does photography, and he's doing all the portraits, and then I'm doing kind of a making of video, and then they gave me a whole bunch of stock footage from, like, some of it dates back to like the 1930s, and some of it's like silent films, which is actually really cool because I'm getting to kind of take all this into Final Cut and play with it, and create a couple of videos that they're going to do a fundraiser in October, and then we're going to show all of these making of videos of all these people getting their portraits taken, and then I'm doing interviews with all of them to talk about how Nebraska Children's Home Society has helped them, and then hopefully all this fundraising will help support new foster parents with their adopted children. So, and those outdoor shoots, I've gotten just because we actually lit it, and it was just amazing feedback. They're really loving what's going on, and I'm looking at it, and I can't wait to show this project. I can't show it till October, but I can't wait to show it off because I'm actually thinking it's going to be one of the better things I've ever done. So pretty excited about it.
You're using the 120D for the outside, or do you using like the 300D? The 120D is enough to do the feel?
Well, I get it really close.
Okay.
So, it makes enough of a difference to where it matters, and it's just basically filling in shadows at that point.
And you're using any soft box on it, or
the sun or
just
anything.
straight? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because the 120D is like not a super powerful light.
No, it's not, but it was in my price range and budget, and it works great indoors, and I even take it outdoors. And I've even found just having a reflector outdoors, even if you can't afford to have a light, just having something to bounce that sunlight back makes a big difference. So,
well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because cinematography isn't only about adding lights. Sometimes it's simply harnessing and shaping the light that's already there, and that could just be a bounce card or a foam core board. So it's good that you mentioned that.
Yeah, on the weddings that I've done, I have always been either alone or with an extra person, and the extra person is with the second camera. So the extra person will film mostly the groom, where I'm filming the bride. I think it's kind of like camera A, bride, and camera
absolutely.
B, groom.
The bride is the most important.
yeah. And like you said, it's almost impossible to be running around with lights everywhere. I mean, you're already carrying maybe a monopod or a stabilizer with your camera and a bunch of lenses. And if you have to carry the lights, it might be completely unfeasible, because a lot of places are also very small. And the bride and the family, probably they planned, for example, on having a nice time while she's having makeup, and they're drinking and they're chatting, and suddenly you bring a lot of equipment in and you're super intrusive, right?
Saying that though, like a lot of lights nowadays, I mean, like the aperture Amran lights are about, I don't know, probably the same size as like a Ninja Inferno, and the output is very powerful. And just to kind of maybe bounce it off a light, off a ceiling or off a wall to get some fill.
Sure.
It's enough there to kind of just add a bit of shadow, a bit of depth to an image.
Maybe I've been lucky, because all the weddings that I've done were during summer, and for whatever reason, there was one that was like at midday. That was when they were having the thing outside, the ceremony outside. Yeah. And that, of course, that was super difficult. And I didn't have any lights, but they were positioned in a nice way, where if I was using very long lenses, I was with a 70-200, I was able to overexpose a little. So the background wasn't like super bright anything. It was just the grass or the water, the lake or something like that. So I could overexpose a little bit, so she would be nice and bright and beautiful, as long as I wouldn't lose any of the details in the dress. Maybe I've been lucky so far, but if I would have more people around, I would definitely carry some extra stuff.
Yeah, I've done only, I think I've shot 4 or 5 weddings. I've edited 2, 3, I don't know. But I will only do a wedding if I have at least one assistant, because the last time I think we had 4 cameras going just to get the coverage I wanted. Granted, 2 of them are locked down. We move them periodically, but it's just, I don't want to spend time editing a wedding unless I know I have that kind of coverage and that kind of,
Same here. Yeah.
you know, those
Yeah.
creative choices in post. Granted, that's not always possible. I've got a buddy, Thomas, who was on our episode 2, I believe. He used to shoot tons of weddings, and he was always alone, and he managed to do it by himself. Lots of people do. Considering I so rarely do weddings, it's just kind of a rule I've set for myself. If I'm going to do it, I'm only going to do it if I have an assistant.
They only deliver as a short
There's
film.
like, is there an earthquake somewhere?
Wow,
What is that?
rain.
Rain. It's just started to thunder and lightning here now.
Wow, that's pretty loud.
Yeah.
Are you safe?
I'm fine in here. I might have to drop my audio out here. Hang on. You guys keep talking. I'll wait for
Okay.
this to pass.
Sam is on the verge of death.
Yeah, in terms of wedding cinematography, I actually, to clients that come to me, I tell them I only deliver a short film, 3 to 5 minutes long. That's all I do, and I have all creative input, and I do not accept any revisions or any changes or any suggestions for music at all. So for those that come to me, they look at my work. If they like it, they hear the conditions. That's how I take forward. If they don't like that, I said, okay, that's no problem, because it's so much work in a wedding. I don't necessarily want to do it.
Well, yes, weddings are a ton of work, and we've discussed this before. A lot of wedding shooters are frowned or looked down upon, which is absurd because of it's so much work and the post
Yeah,
is
it is.
work, and if you're doing your job
would
properly,
agree.
the edit. Yes, I know you would. I'm not saying this for your benefit. I agree. I've done enough weddings to know that it
I
is
concur.
a ton of work. So yeah, you can't look down on that.
Yeah, I feel like that, especially in comparison to the photographer, and that's just the way the wedding industry is right
Yeah.
now. The videographer is kind of a last-minute addition, whereas the photographer is booked day one.
And underpaid.
Yeah, and underpaid.
No, the photographer's overpaid. Well, they might not be overpaid. We're just underpaid by comparison. If you look at like amount of work required, video,
Work,
photo.
equipment, time,
right.
crew. I mean,
Yeah.
all of those, they contribute to the price, right? And how much
Absolutely.
work goes afterwards in post-production. Seriously, I understand that a photographer can be very perfectionist, but they are correcting and grading and working on a frame at a time. And normally, you're not gonna get a photographer that's gonna deliver more than 50 to 150 pictures.
Yeah, not to mention that there's a lot of room for error as a photographer, because you only have to get that one shot. Whereas
Yes.
if a photographer stands right in front of my camera for half of the vows, that really messes me over, because I'm gonna hopefully have,
Well, Bill, you need to add a taser to your camera kit.
no kidding. Yeah, actually in my last wedding, I did have, and it was my friend who was for shooting photos. He stepped in front of one of my cameras. Luckily, I had 2 cameras running during the ceremony, and I just went to the other camera, and then I mixed in a little B-roll when he was walking through the shot, and the bride and groom didn't even notice. And when they got the video back, they were like, "This is awesome." Anyway.
I thought you were going to say, luckily I had a Chinese throwing star.
Oh yeah. No, I gave a friendly comment to him afterwards about it, and just said, "Dude, you're stepping in my shots. Knock it off." But
There is a guy called Rob Adams. He does wedding videos there in the U.S. And him and his wife, they work together. His wife does the photos. Rob Adams, and him and his wife, they work together. She does the photos, he does the videos, and it's very interesting hearing them talking about this. Is like how important it is that the photographer and the cinematographer are one team.
Oh, absolutely.
So the way they move, you decide who is the main person. If it's the photographer, the cinematographer is always like kind of side by side, so you're never going in front of each other's camera. Or if the cinematographer is the main one, which I think should be, just because of the complexity of everything, the
Right.
photographer makes sure that is always on one side of the camera, because you also have a big camera maybe.
The great thing about my working relationship with the photographer, if we ever do any weddings, is the photographer is also my brother. So,
Nice.
we do video production and photography. If we ever get hired for a wedding, they always go, "Do you want video as well?" We kind of bundle something together. It makes things very easy. You might be able to hear the thunder actually going on.
Nice.
It's like doomsday all of a sudden. It's kind of we started, we slagged off Premiere too much, and now it's decided to rain down on me. But yeah.
Yeah. For wedding videography, I don't always have the luxury of working. I love to work with my friend Chris because I know what I'm getting most of the time, unless he steps in my shot. But
Yeah.
a lot of times I'm just meeting this photographer for the first time when I'm out on these weddings, and I try to communicate as much as possible. Communication is very key, and then just as it would be with the officiant or whoever is a wedding planner during the wedding, just make sure that you communicate with those people well in advance, and especially the DJ. If you're filming a reception, that's the one place that I would probably almost never bring a light, just because it can become very distracting.
And you kill the ambience, the whole planning that they
Yeah.
had for the lights there.
Well, I keep digressing, but I was going to talk about communicating with the DJ,
Yeah.
because I bring Zoom H4n with me everywhere I go, and I use the XLR out on their board to go right into the Zoom H4n and just record everything that goes on. That way you get really good speeches. If they're actually having the wedding, I've had that before where they have the ceremony at the reception location. You can get the vows that way.
When they have a
Otherwise-
professional mixer, right? Because a lot of
Right.
DJs use like consumer grade mixers. They don't have XLR outs. They only have
Right.
XLR for the speakers.
Yeah, and you can actually get an XLR out from some of those speakers too. Sometimes they've got an
Yeah.
extra out
Yeah,
you just plug in there,
that's-
but it kind of depends. And sometimes it's not available, yeah.
That's a case where it's nice to have kind of an assortment of different cables and adapters in your kit.
For
Because
sure.
sometimes it might be a 1/4-inch cable or XLR or AV, red and white old school
Yeah.
cable. I've spent a fair amount of money just having a kind of a stockpile of cables I've never used yet, but I don't want to get in a position where I can't capture this because I'm not prepared. So
Yeah, it's
that's-
always better to have more than enough than not enough. That's for sure. And
yeah, unless you're talking about wives.
oh yeah, I can barely keep up with one of those. So,
That'd be-
uh-oh.
It's like Armageddon over there.
Here comes the rain.
Sorry, Sam. Sam, what's a cookie?
A cookie is a thing with chocolate chips in it.
What's a biscuit?
A biscuit is also like a cookie, just
No,
without the chocolate.
no, a biscuit is a flaky bread, buttery thing. Isn't that? Am I right, Bill? These English
Yeah.
coming up with these funny words.
Yeah. Biscuits are things you put gravy on.
Yes.
Ugh.
Okay, yeah. So I have an issue with certain people that I run across online who call themselves filmmakers and cinematographers, yet they're not making films and they don't use lights. I
Yeah.
feel like they're kind of arrogating this title onto themselves. Earlier when I
That happens
mentioned
a lot. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Like earlier when I mentioned that I want to change videography to cinematography on my website, like, don't get me wrong. It's not like I walked on the street, I'm a cinematographer, like I'm Roger Deakins or something. I'm not. I'm not anywhere near that. But I feel like I've done this enough and I've harnessed lighting enough to be able to at least sufficiently call myself that, at least use that term. Like, I write music. But I write electronic music, it's note by note. I can't read music, so I don't walk around calling myself a musician. Like, these things are titles you have to earn, in my opinion, right? Just because I can pick up an iPhone, that doesn't make me a videographer,
Right.
right? So, like, you have to earn these things.
Cinematography is not about the camera either that you're using. You can
Exactly.
have something really well done out
There
of
was
an iPhone.
there was a film. Is it called Tangerine that was done on the iPhone 5 that was shot. It was amazing because it had good lighting, good sound, good visuals. iPhone 5 camera it was shot on. Like it's not about the tools. I mean, like I saw a tweet the other day. I can't remember the guy's name, unfortunately, but it was a retweet, and it was said that I've never seen scriptwriters argue about what they used to write with.
Yeah.
Right.
It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same with you shoot you use what you got to use. It's as long as it looks good and it's made well, story wise. If it's a narrative story, composition,
is all that matters.
Does it achieve the goal?
Yeah. Does it? I've seen things filmed on an iPhone that have conveyed a better story than something shot on a Red, because it has pacing, meaning, it has a message it needs to deliver. It just reaches an audience a lot quicker and easier because it was done that way. But the thing it was filmed with doesn't denote any value to the final piece.
Using a $80,000 camera with expensive cinema lenses and follow focus and an external monitor doesn't make it any good. It's the person behind it that is doing the whole thing.
Last week I had to do, I think I mentioned in the previous episode, I had to do a kind of a pickup, an hour-long, a guy talking about taxes in a conference hall. That to me is videography. But then the very next morning, I was shooting a guy in a kitchen doing a cooking show. So I had two 4-foot 4-bank Kinoflows lighting the scene. I had an Airy LED Fresnel as a rim light. I had two separate LEDs, dimmable bicolor, on the floor lighting up different parts of the background. That to me is cinematography. Because it was all about framing and composition.
It looked gorgeous.
Thank you. And
it looked really good.
I got home and I was like, this looks freaking awesome. Like, I wish everything I shot could look like this. But the guy talking in the conference room will never look like that because it's the exact same camera. It was the same profile, but it was just overhead fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
The lighting made all the difference. And granted, cinematography is more than just lighting. It's composition, it's movement, it's all that.
Yeah,
but
it's a lot of
lighting
things.
is such an important thing.
Yeah, for sure. The difference between us and your average Joe with an iPhone camera is light. Light is what we use to make things,
pretty,
to create. Not to discount audio, because audio is important too. But
that's a whole other. Yeah, we need to do another episode just on audio for video.
I mean, that's about. They usually say it's 50-50, isn't it? Like, but it's more like 80-20 for me. Like, sound is always more important than visuals on the timeline kind of perspective, like for the story.
Absolutely, you can forgive a minor, film grain here or something.
A little bit of noise here,
But if your audio is bad, you just lost everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest things that I see in videography or weddings or corporate or otherwise. The things that separate the people that really impress me is light and sound. And those are the two biggest things that I think that if you can get educated, like I watch videos all the time. I'm always trying to learn. I went to the Final Cut Pro 10 Summit 2 years now, and then once in 2011 when it wasn't even called the Final Cut Pro 10 Summit, because they had Premiere stuff there too.
Yeah, I was going to say on the back of kind of watching videos and learning about light and sound, there's a great guy on YouTube called Curtis Judd.
Yes, he's fantastic.
He's a fantastic guy. His videos look always look crisp and clean. He knows how to do lighting. He knows his sound really well, and he just teaches people what.
And he advertises the show as make your videos better with light and sound. That's exactly what.
Yeah,
what
it's like it's
I'm
the
writing
camera.
this down right now.
Curtis Judd.
You need to watch his stuff. He covers so many different things, and like I've gotten something of value from every one of his videos.
And
I'm a big fan.
Smart. He really knows what he's talking about.
One of his recent videos is about wireless microphones, and I've been looking at wireless microphones for about a week or two now. And he conveniently brings out a video about wireless microphones, and
nice.
Like he talks about the Sennheiser G3 and G4, and it's like that's probably going to be the one I go for.
And I use the cheaper one that he shows there. I use the Rodelink one.
And it's fantastic. And he just says like he gives the good size, the bad size, and he says like from each level of consumer, prosumer, and pro. He goes through loads of them. He talks about the Tascam DR70, the cheaper end, and then like the Zoom F8, F4. It's fantastic to kind of see that. And he talks about lighting as well. He tells you how to light a scene for interviews and for corporate videos and things like that. And
just this week, I was trying to figure out how to power my Zoom F8 with a V-mount battery. and Curtis Judd has a video on that. So
Yes.
again, he came into the rescue, and he's never even met me.
Nice.
Maybe we should invite him.
Yeah, we should bring him on
I
the
would,
show.
I
That'd
would
be
love
great.
to have him on because there's no. In fact, he's one of the. I've wanted to do tutorials for a long time, but for a number of reasons, him being one of them, there are just so many people doing such a good job at that. Why do I need
Oh,
to
yeah.
compete with that? You know,
Yeah.
what we're doing, what the Get a Grip is kind of a lot more big picture, and we get granular at times, but it's more of a general. Let's just openly discuss. We might talk about a piece of gear, but this isn't
a
going to be
pub
like
talk.
how do you set your audio levels and what jack do you use. That's, he's already doing that wonderfully. There are DSLR video shooter Caleb Pike. He does a great job. I mean, there's so many people out there already doing it. But Bill, I'm glad you mentioned the summit because the three of us are going to try really hard to go this year. What are your plans?
Yeah, that was actually one of the stipulations of me accepting my new job at Woodman. Was I told them
That's awesome.
My old work would invest in me, and I really want to go to learn, have this education. So they're going to hopefully be sending me as soon as they announce the dates. I don't know. We're thinking hopefully October. So I really want to go.
Yeah.
And there's about a 99.8% chance I'll be there. So.
Well, because if we're all able to go, the summit will be the first time Sam and Philippe and I will have met in person.
Sweet.
It'll be their first time meeting you, obviously, my second time. And we will absolutely be recording a live episode of Get a Grip there. And we have a few other plans, too, that we'll discuss over time.
Cool.
Well-
This was an awesome conversation.
It was, yeah. It's been
Yeah,
great to kind
absolutely.
of see a bit more insight into kind of where the wedding side of things and how, the difference between videography and cinematography, because at the end of the day, we're all filmmakers, we're all using tools to complete particular jobs. It's just how we define what goes on in the frame that defines what kind of person and filmmaker we are, I imagine.
Are any of us 100% content with the quality of work we're able to produce now, or are we all actively working to get better and better?
I'm never
Always
content.
working. Yeah.
Always working, yeah. And thank you guys for having me on here because stuff like this, getting to interact with other people doing what you're doing, it gets me excited about what I do. And I really like to learn from other people. That's a huge part of what I do is bouncing ideas off of others. I know Gabe and I, ever since the summit, I throw a billion questions at him, and he's always really kind to respond to me, and we share stuff with each other, and I really just enjoy that camaraderie that comes out of that. I feel like without the summit especially, I wouldn't have had that opportunity, because there's people locally, but not a lot of people use Final Cut Pro 10 either around here. A lot of them are Premiere editors, and I feel like I'm kind of in the minority, and to just have that availability to other Final Cut editors is really awesome. Yeah.
It's all come full circle because I felt completely embraced by nearly everyone at the summit. Even though I'm not editing features currently, I'm not in broadcast, I'm a very small fish in a very big pond, but I felt like an equal to everybody there. And it was leaving the summit where I was most inspired to kind of put a show together. And so now that I reached out to Sam and then Philippe, and now we have this show, and now you're on, who I met at the summit. It's kind of a nice full circle thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
lots
it's
of those
awesome.
things going on lately. A lot of things going on, things coming full circle in my life as well. It's kind of funky, kind of cool. But awesome. It's been a great talk.
Cool.
Thanks,
It's
Bill,
been
very
great-
much
it's been great,
for being
It's
on.
been great to have you on. Yeah, it's been great to meet you and talk to you.
Who's
And,
the social plugs?
Yes,
Absolutely.
well, follow us on Facebook. Give us this
Twitter.
video, Twitter, and
YouTube.
YouTube. Subscribe. Hit the bell as well. I think you can hit the bell and you can be notified when we upload a video. We're on iTunes. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Episode 4 has just been up as we're recording this one. Episode, whatever this number this is, will go up. And thank you guys ever so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. And any comments, any feedback? We always have to know what we can improve and what we can change, things that you guys think we should talk about, and we'll have a little read and see what you guys think of the show. Thank you guys
Nice.
for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.